Hey everyone, doing another reaction video. This one is from Jake Munro. He's a really, really cool YouTuber. I follow this guy's videos a lot. Give him a subscribe. Check out his videos. Go and like the original video too. This one is called The UK is Lost. It's actually an interview between Jesse Lee Peterson and Jake Munro. I thought it could be interesting to watch and react to. So let's get it.
The United States is becoming the UK as far as destruction and illegal aliens and all that mess. Why did the citizens of UK allow that to happen? Where the Muslims and the blacks are taking over and the whites are under attack and being raped and killed and robbed and murdered. Why did they allow that to happen? The whites.
Well, it's not so much that they allowed it to happen. They were paralyzed into a position where they were unable to act on this happening. The state of the economy in the UK is such a precarious position at the moment where people, the general populace of white people, they're not in a position where they've got nothing left to lose. They also don't have enough money to not complain. They're in this sort of limbo where they have just enough to live. And if they upset that very, very precarious balance, they can lose everything. They've got just enough to scrape by. And if they were to revolt in any way, or which I'm going to say next up, which is one of the other reasons why they don't say anything, but if they were to be incarcerated or detained, if they were to be put on blast for being a racist or whatever, then that's whatever little money they have left completely gone. I mean, it would be better in terms of motivating a revolt if people here in the UK had nothing left. They've got, well, I've got nothing left to lose, let's fight. But they're in this very, very precarious economic situation. And the other reason why they've been allowed to use the phrase allowed it to happen is because, quite frankly, there's nothing they can really do, because there has been legislation and policy put in place in order to paralyze people from saying things. There are legalities correlated to saying things against immigration. Like, for example, have you heard of Prevent that operates here in the UK?
Prevent?
That's an interesting point that Jake brings up, and I think that's brought about by design, the economic hardship that British people feel, it being just sort of bad enough and not quite bad enough where they've got nothing to lose, but bad enough that they still have to rely on working the 9 to 5, paying their bills, trying to look after their families, keep the heating on, scrounge together enough money for rent and food and whatnot, and other bills. It's by design, and I feel like a lot of Western countries these days are infected with that kind of greed coming from up top, certainly from corrupt governments that are doing everything they can to sort of keep a stranglehold on the people, but for it to not be so tight that the people rebel, but just tight enough that the people feel like they don't have time to rebel because they're trying to get things together and look after their families. Certainly that seems to be the feeling amongst other countries. I mean, it's hard for me to correlate the situation to the situation in New Zealand, because it's very different. In New Zealand, we don't have this kind of tumultuous conflict that's happening over here, but we certainly are feeling the pressure economically, and I think a lot of New Zealanders struggle just to get by and put bread on the table, as it were, and there's definitely disparity, and people are treated differently depending on, this or their culture, and that's a problem. Whether or not you're a minority, it's not really that it's true democracy, because if it were true democracy, everyone would be treated the same, but they're not. Anyway, I digress. These two are talking about something different now. I think you mentioned the Prevent program. Let's continue.
Yeah, Prevent.
No, I've not heard of that.
Yeah, it's a denomination of the terrorist police force here in the UK, and they're specifically organized to deal with extremism, to deal with terrorism, which is a blanket term. It's an ambiguous term that they operate under.
What they consider
But
terrorism.
what they typically do,
Or
a lot
extremism.
of people are familiar with the 2023 reports of around 12,000 people in the UK being arrested for social media posts. Probably familiar with this kind of statistic.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, so that's a very, very famous 2023 statistic of the amount of people that were, at the very least, brought in and questioned for the posts that they made online. Prevent are responsible for that happening, and they've arrested mothers in the middle of the day, and you know, teenagers, and they've arrested hardworking fathers and stuff like that, and with the punishments that they've been doling out, even for saying things on the internet, Facebook, very, very mild things, absolutely innocuous things, even just saying, I'm not entirely satisfied with the amount of immigration coming into the UK. Nothing derogatory, you know, not even slurs were being used, and that was enough for these people to be detained. So
It's completely outrageous, really, when you think about it. It really does remind you of the book 1984, if you've ever read that. I mean, you can read that book just by looking around you. And what he's saying about people getting arrested over tweets, that sort of tyrannical control that the government is desperate to use to enforce these absurd rules, basically to keep people down, so that they can continue to carry out their plan of staying in power, essentially. People being silenced, not allowed to speak, not allowed to protest. I mean, it certainly seems like that there has been a disintegration of the right to protest in Western countries. I mean, we had a similar situation where I think it might have been over the vaccination during the pandemic, and they were forcing people to get that vaccination, and if you didn't get that vaccination you could lose your job and be heckled by all the sheeple that were working around saying that, oh, you're endangering us. The problem is, in all our cultures, whether it be in the United States or the UK, Australia or New Zealand, is the fact that there is a large swath of the population that are mindless sheeple who basically swallow up all of the propaganda wholesale that the government is feeding them through the mainstream media, and they just end up parroting all of these talking points and looking down upon you if you are so bold as to speak out or have a differing opinion. And that's an issue that we've certainly experienced during the pandemic over in New Zealand, under our own tyrannical leader, which is basically the female version of Keir Starmer. Only she didn't get as far, thank God. But Keir Starmer, what he's done is absolutely awful. But primarily, what it really is what the government has done in the UK is really awful. And you know, they're still in power, and that's a problem. So let's continue anyway. I'm sort of distracting everyone from the video, but that's just my take.
Amazing.
the reason why people aren't revolting against this, the reason why this is being allowed to happen by the British natives, is because, quite frankly, they're economically and legally not allowed to fight against it.
But if they don't stand up, and then I have a follow-up about that. If they don't stand up and things are as bad as they are now, they can only get worse if you don't stand up at the risk of losing it all, because you're going to lose it all anyway.
Exactly, and this is, I think, is becoming very, very apparent, because at first you have those that are politically aware. You have a small group of voices that are always trying to wake up the proles, so to speak, to use Orwellian language there. But there's a few people, a minority of people, that are aware of what's happening, and they're constantly using their voices to try and wake everybody else up, because it's not going to be a small few that do it. It's going to be a nationwide revolt against this regime. And
the problem too is that if you're trying to convince certain people, they're far too comfortable and affluent to even give a shit. I'm talking about a specific generation here. I think you know what I'm talking about. Trying to get through to them the importance of what's going on in Western society is like talking to a brick wall, and you're better off talking to a brick wall in most cases, because at least it will just shut up and listen. But I've certainly found it difficult to bridge that gap and to air my grievances with folks of the boomer age bracket. However, I won't say all, but obviously there's a large swath of the population that is very comfortable and very almost, and they're plugged in. Like it's kind of like the Matrix. They're really plugged in to the propaganda machine. As a New Zealander, like a lot of young New Zealanders, I'm sure can relate to me when I say that a whole bunch of our country is basically ruled by communist hippies and hinder any kind of economic growth, any kind of opportunities for young people, any kind of ladder to climb up has already been pulled up behind them, and it's systemic, and it's on purpose, and and it's becoming an aging population. It's probably better to call it Old Zealand rather than New Zealand, because all the young people will leave eventually at the rate it's going. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. Let's keep going.
So many things have happened in such a short amount of time. I think now even the layman, even the working man, is starting to realize that the system is not incompetent. It's actually purposefully rigged against them, and I can definitely
absolutely
sense there's growing tension and discomfort amongst the working class British. So I think we are on the precipice of something quite cataclysmic happening here in the UK.
And when you mentioned the YouTube punishment and the arrest for even slightly thinking about it's wrong to have illegals there and all that, that is pretty much happening to white people, right? Mostly white people are being punished and being locked up and all that for thinking or disagreeing with this. Am I right about that?
You are correct. Yeah, it's almost exclusively white people that suffer punishments for that. In fact, there's an example of that recently. There was I don't know if you heard about this, but there was a Muslim man that recently went on a stabbing spree in a Jewish neighborhood here in London.
Yeah.
It was Golders Green, and a couple of Jews were stabbed. Now, the individual, the Muslim man that was responsible for the stabbing, had already been processed by Prevent, who was supposed to dole out punishments or even detain these kinds of people, but he went through all their tests and all their checks and all the background checks, and the guy was allowed to walk away from Prevent.
What the heck?
Who have arrested and detained and locked up white British people for far less than what he was being questioned for, and he subsequently went on to walk into a Jewish neighborhood with a knife and just start swinging the knife around. So yeah, it's what they refer to over here as two-tier justice.
It's disgusting. I can't believe that this sort of injustice is able to continue.
That was that young man that was stabbed, according to the report, and the police were handcuffing him, and he said, "I've been stabbed," but they didn't seem to care or believe him.
Yeah, that was Henry Novak.
We reported on that.
The crazy thing is, and the thing that really pisses me off being a New Zealander, is that I had to look up stuff about Henry. They don't cover anything to do with the protests in the UK. They don't cover anything to do with America, besides Trump derangement content, which the boomers love over here, which is basically all they hear, by the way. Everything is Trump's fault over here, and the people are so brainwashed in New Zealand that they believe that everything that goes wrong in their country is because of Trump rather than our own government. And it's really frustrating to be one of the ones that's awake and seeing things the way they are over here, and then just being surrounded by mindless, brainless drones who don't give a crap about what's going on in the world, who don't even care a little bit to look into some alternative media to actually find the news. Instead, they're very content just being spoon-fed happy-go-lucky kumbaya stories from our own government about how everything is fine and, oh no, the environment this and the environment that, we've got to put more restrictions and this and that because some breed of snails underground is at an all-time low of their population. I mean, it's really pathetic. I think the worst part about New Zealand politics is that they treat the general population like children, but it could be worse. We could be in the UK, and I really feel for anyone in the UK, actually, for that matter, who's going through this with all of these undocumented illegal criminals running wild and then being supported and protected by a corrupt police force, systematically and strategically by a government that's importing their new voter base, which is disgusting and is treason.
Yeah, that was a very, very grave, tragic set of circumstances.
Yeah. What a mess. So my question, so the government over there, is it predominantly white or is it controlled by people of color?
Well, there's, up top, it's relatively homogenous. I mean, all of the prime ministers have been white so far, but there are boroughs that exist. So you've got London, and you've got the various parts of London, like Southampton, for example, and they have their own local councils to run the subsection of neighborhoods and people that live there. And these councils are currently being replaced entirely by foreigners and people that don't even speak English. For example, Brighton's mayor, I believe, can't even speak English. Brighton is a very beautiful southern English seaside town.
Amazing.
Absolutely beautiful place. I've been there before. I've been there multiple times. And their mayor can't even speak English. He needs a translator. In fact, even worse than that, and I covered this recently in one of my streams, in Scotland, I think it was Edinburgh, one of the Scottish council members was a non-binary trans Indian man that came over on a student visa in 2021, and he ran for council leadership, and I believe he won. And I think, and I need to get this confirmed, I
don't understand how someone who's fresh off the boat can be elected into parliament. That's insane. Or to be elected into council.
After the elections, he had to leave because his visa did not allow him to stay in the country until it was renewed. So these are the kinds of people that are starting to, and I've got many other stories about that, but these are the kinds of people that slowly are taking over those that control the council, the boroughs and the councils throughout the UK, and that's in Scotland, and it goes all the way down to Brighton from north to south.
That's amazing. So my question is, why do white people vote in white people who would not defend them and stand up for them as citizens? Why would they vote in white people who put the illegal aliens over them? Why do white people vote for those kind of people? Their own people.
Well, there's only two types of people that do vote for these people to bring in more immigrants, and that's women and Muslims. Because yeah,
I would say also out-of-touch boomers who basically believe everything that they're being spoon-fed, which is probably a large swath of the British population as well. If it's anything like New Zealand, a lot of them have no idea or what, they believe everything that they're told, and the very, very gullible generation. Not all, before the all police come after me, not all, but a large population of them are sheeple who trust in the government, and also who don't really give a shit. I think that's the other part too. But anyway, I'll stop going on about boomers. He's correct though.
A lot of white men, especially in the UK, especially the Gen Z variety, are very much of the conservative persuasion. However, the reason why the Labour government and even the Conservative government over here, which is not the same as what Restore is, Conservative is just as politically captured as Labour is. Labour is our Democrats, essentially. And the reason why immigration's been so aggressive is before we used to take in asylum seekers, which is, as you know, primarily women and children from war-torn zones.
First
And
mistake.
they were temporarily housed here, and then once the war is over, they go home. However, this system has been entirely abused, and every single day there is more and more small inflatable boats coming over from France, bringing in military-aged, war-aged black men from Sudan, Senegal, from Morocco, various Somalia, which is another really big one. And every single day they're arriving on the shores of England, and they're then dispersed and introduced into the British public by the government, who subsidize hotels and other accommodations where they get served free food, they get free phones, free clothes. In fact, some of them are even given jobs for things like DoorDash, and which is, taking away jobs from kids who could be doing that, teenagers doing that. And the reason why Labor are complicit in doing this is because essentially what they're doing is they're importing their voters. So they know the British public are not going to vote for them because they're consistently, chronically incompetent. And at this point, it's no secret that they hate British people. The last prime minister that just resigned was a former Trotskyist and a columnist for a socialist magazine back in the late 80s. So essentially what's happening here is a brainwashed female population of the UK and a very, very large Muslim population, London, of which only 38% consider themselves to be white. There's a vast majority of London that is non-white. And these people vote in people like Sadiq Khan, which is a Pakistani mayor of London. And this is how this keeps happening, because they're voting in, they're importing their voters into the country.
I don't think voting will work then anymore for the UK. If that's the case, then the only thing that will work is protest. Whether or not that spills over into something else, who knows? Only time will tell. But yeah, how can voting work if the voter base, the majority of the voter base, has been captured by the government? It's very sad what's happening in the UK.
What a mess!
Yeah, unbelievable. It really is. And they constantly misrepresent the immigration numbers all the time.
The same thing happened in South Africa. As you know, white people ran South Africa for a long time. It was beautiful, but the whites gave in under pressure, and
That's right.
the blacks took over. Now it's a hellhole. White people out on the farmland trying to have a life, but the blacks, according to all reports, are following them out there and killing them and things like that. And now that's happening in America. Exactly what's happening in your country, the UK, is happening in America. It happened in South Africa. And I've noticed that in all of the white countries where it was built by white people, it was amazing. They've allowed these people to come in and completely take over. And I'm just blown away, because I know it's fear of being called names or losing something, but I just don't understand how white people can, with the help of God, build the greatest countries on the planet, and then just allow their enemies to come in and completely take over. Their children, their women are being raped, robbed, knocked out in the streets and everything. I'm just not understanding, where is the fight? Well, stand up fight, voting out these people. I'm just not understanding. What do white people, and then I want to move on, Jake, but what are white people expecting to happen, and where will they go when their countries are completely taken away from them?
Well, historically speaking, white people have been very, very long to anger. It takes a very long time for white people to reach a point where they reclaim their nations. I mean, the Reconquista is one, for example. That reclamation of their country took hundreds of years. It was a very, very long process. And I've said this before in a previous stream, but I believe that it is white people's very complacent nature, very placid nature, that is the reason why white people have been able to build such incredible societies and amazing architecture.
Yeah.
Is because we're not prone to reactive violence. We are very docile, and we focus primarily on diplomacy. And I think white people do this because they know the efficiency of which we operate causes borders to shift. Entire religions get erased as a response. There's incredible amounts of casualties whenever white people do it, because we are so, in terms of the military, we are so efficient. And white people always want to try and avoid that because of how catastrophic it is in order to engage in something like that, because of just how powerful we are. And
That's an interesting point. The anger is definitely there amongst a lot of white people. I would say, whether or not they're going to do something about it, they kind of, unless they're pushed to the absolute brink, where there's no other option, it's something that they avoid, and they try to prioritize diplomacy for sure.
And it's because of this virtue that we have the cities that we have the societies and the diplomacy and the capitalism and the democracy that we have, because we are not prone to reactive violence like a lot of other places throughout Africa are. They are very prone to almost childlike, very infantile fits of immediate reactionary violence.
Right.
And we don't do that. And because of that, we have the patience in order to really build what we have here.
But the white men who founded these countries, they went through hell. They were tough. They endured. They fought back. They stood up. And then when I was growing up down in Alabama, on a plantation, under Jim Crow law and all that mess, in those days, white people stood up even back then, especially white men. But in my country, I noticed that once they came up with this stupid idea of civil rights and all this other mess, white people kind of gave up and gave in, and it just seemed to be. It was.
Well, it's like they say, it's peaceful times make weak men.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
I think
point.
that's exactly what happened. We're not the strong, hardened post-war white man that we used to be. This is, just look at the transgender ideologies that are spreading. They're only spreading in privileged countries. Like, you won't find transgenderism anywhere else on Earth. You won't even find gay rights anywhere else on Earth, except for the very, very privileged states that comprise America. And because of this peacefulness, because of this perpetual peacefulness that has created weak men, in its place we have found degeneration, and we found debauchery, and we found all these things that are weakening America, even the white nations, from its very core. And these hard times are about to make some very strong men.
Also, things will change for the good, meaning that at some point they're going to say, hell no, I won't go.
That's true.
Absolutely. I mean, white people for the longest time have been the global minority, ethnically speaking. And despite this, we have not only been able to maintain our numbers, though they have been declining, but we've been able to thrive on a planet that is primarily populated by what people could consider to be savages. And you've got the Eastern Asians that sort of mirror the same kind of thing that we do as well, like the Japanese and South Koreans. And they've built similar cities and societies. Some would argue, arguably, they would be better. But, you've got the Japanese, for example, who suffered 2 nuclear bombs, which was potentially enough to wipe them out entirely. But a few decades later, they made Nintendo. So there definitely is a trait that exists amongst races that innately makes them superior, and in that superiority, it doesn't really come with arrogance. I mean, you've got the colonizers from Europe who went out to spread their wealth and their prosperity with other nations. For example, you had the Spanish that went over to Mexico, and they stopped the Aztecs from all those blood sacrifices that were killing thousands. There were local tribes that even helped the Spaniards to fight the Aztecs. And we've, even in Africa, there's been missionaries, Christian missionaries, that have gone down there, and they've abolished human sacrifice. And
the same thing happened in New Zealand. I think when the first white people showed up to colonize New Zealand, there were different tribes of the Maori people that were warring with one another, and they were able to basically make allies with them to fight the, I guess you could say, the more savage tribes who were busy murdering and doing God knows what else to the Maori people. And there was yeah, there's some really good alliances there. It's a shame that certainly in our culture here in New Zealand that those sorts of facts aren't talked about very much anymore, because I really like when races come together to join forces against evil. There's something cathartic about when they achieve victory and they're able to usher in a society that brings peace and prosperity to all races within that community. But yeah, certainly interesting point that he's raising.
It's not like even our prosperity comes with this arrogance. We very much do come with altruism. We want to go out and spread that with the world.
Right. I don't know if I ever heard anyone explain it as clearly and as well as you've done. I appreciate that.
I couldn't agree more. Jesse Lee Peterson is right, and that's part of the reason why I like Jake Munro's channel. He is exceptionally good at explaining these sorts of complicated topics in a very simple manner, because he's got a depth of understanding and wisdom about him, and maturity too, which allows him to do that. Big shout out to him and to his channel. Definitely go and subscribe, go and like the original video. We'll just wrap this up. I'm sure we've got just a few more minutes here.
I want to know what's important to you.
What's important to me is to maintain British culture, which ties very closely to the identity that you see before you, which is, you know, the black lipstick and this thing going on here. This is what is called goth, which is a white subculture that was developed towards the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s in the UK. And it was the prosperity and the liberty that the UK held that allowed people like myself to explore this sort of creativity and artistry. And with the invasion of Muslims and an inferior, antiquated culture, which has provably failed in its own nations, whenever they come over here and they overwrite the British culture, everything else goes with that. Sharia law will make sure that no freedom, no artistic expression is ever shown again. And because of that, I very much do stand again. I oppose all of that. On top of that, not just the subculture and the freedoms and all of the artistic expression that is associated with the UK, I mean, London specifically, like you've got punk music and the Beatles, and you had Ozzy Osbourne, all these kinds of really amazing things that changed the world.
Yeah.
And those were allowed to propagate, those were allowed to spread because of the liberties and the freedom and the prosperity that was within the UK at the time. But with this invasion of Muslims, and with the invasion of these inferior cultures, and with these low IQ savages from opportunistic countries throughout Africa and even India as well, and neighboring countries like Bangladesh, you've also, what you're bringing in is violence against our women and our children. And it's not that we're making a space for their culture is erasing ours entirely. And
that's the bottom line right there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with races living together in harmony, but when there's graping and killings, and when there's violence and criminal groups rising up, and there's a disparity between different races, and some are treated with contempt, with absolute contempt, and others are treated with preferential treatment and with favour, unjust favour, I'll add, then that's when you get a breaking down of harmony. Yeah, and that's by design, and let's not get it twisted. It's thanks to the British government. They're the ones to blame. It's not about racism or anything like that, or any kind of supremacy movement. It's all it's about is about corrupt governments trying to assert their control by any means necessary, and they do that by increasing racial tensions between natives and foreigners. And it's really sad, and it's unnecessary as well, and it's not the way it should be. People should be able to get along. I mean, I've seen it in New Zealand to a different degree. It's nowhere near like the UK. The UK is, I mean, I feel bad for what's going on in the UK, because of course New Zealand was founded by the British, and you know, so there is that connection there. But you know, what the government, what left-leaning governments, leftist governments, socialist, communist governments, socialist governments really are trying to do in Western countries is dividing and conquering, basically, to continue to consolidate power through sowing division between its own people, the people that are living in the country. And what better way to do that than to import a whole bunch of violent immigrants that cannot assimilate into the culture of the natives. So yeah, I mean, we don't really have that in New Zealand, fortunately. Certainly not yet, although I hope it never happens. But we have had a lot of racial tension, which has been basically propagated by our government needlessly, when we had great figures amongst both white and Maori people and other cultures too, who were New Zealanders who got along really well. I mean, the one that I always like to think about is Billy T. James, who was a Maori comedian in New Zealand who everyone loves, and I feel like he was the last true comedian in New Zealand. Well, I think that about sums it up, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this reaction video. I mean, I sort of tried to give a few of my insights there. I feel for all those from the UK who are going through this right now. I hope our prayers are with you. I hope there is peace and order restored. Hopefully it doesn't have to come to any sort of bloodshed, because that's always a shame when that has to happen. But as you know, history does tend to repeat itself if it left long enough. But anyway, it's always good to tune in and see Jake Munro's channel. Do go over there and watch the video in full, and give it a like, of course. But I do like to spread awareness of his videos. Even if I spread awareness of his videos to New Zealanders, that makes me feel good, because I think he's got a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the UK, and certainly if we're trying to be caught up with British current events from Europe, Jake Munro is a good man to follow. And also follow Jesse Lee Peterson. He always has some interesting interviews, and he has a really good understanding and take on what's going on in the United States, and I always appreciate hearing from him too. So thank you again for liking the video, thank you for subscribing, thank you for tuning in, thank you for listening to me drone on about all my own takes and whatnot, and yeah, we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.